Picture a city where the streets are completely empty by mid-morning, not because of a curfew, not because of a storm, but because stepping outside could kill you. That city is Banda in northern India, and in May 2026, it recorded 48.2 degrees Celsius, making it not just the hottest place in India that day, but one of the hottest places on the entire planet. Today, we're breaking down why Banda became the world's hottest city, what combination of geography and human decisions created this crisis, and what it means for the more than 2 million people who call it home. By the end of this episode, you'll understand the science behind extreme heat, why Banda is a geography lesson unlike any other, and what happens to human life when a place starts to become unlivable. Joining me to dig into all of this is someone who's been deep in the research. Let's get into it.
So let's start with where Banda actually is, because the location itself is a huge part of the story.
Yeah, I think a lot of people hear hottest place in India and immediately picture Rajasthan, the desert, the sand dunes. Banda is not that.
Exactly, and that's what makes this so striking. Banda is in the Bundelkhand region of Uttar Pradesh. It's a rocky, semi-arid plateau in the southern part of the state, sitting along the banks of the Ken River. It's actually near the Tropic of Cancer, which already puts it in a zone that receives intense direct solar radiation. But it's not a desert in the traditional sense. It's more of a rugged, drought-prone landscape with exposed topsoils and dry stone hills.
So it's not sand and dunes, it's rock and plateau.
Right, and that rocky terrain is actually a key part of why temperatures get so extreme. According to IMD senior scientist Mohammed Danish, the rocky terrain absorbs heat rapidly during the day and releases it very slowly at night. So you get this brutal daytime spike and then no real cooling overnight. The heat just stays.
That's a really unsettling image. Like the ground itself is holding on to the heat.
That's exactly what's happening. And to give some historical context, climate data going back to 1981 shows that Banda's average May high is already around 47.2 degrees Celsius. The all-time record is 49.7 degrees Celsius, recorded in May 1994. So this is a place that has always been hot. But what's changed is the frequency and intensity of these extreme spikes.
Wait, so the average May high is already nearly 47 degrees? That's the average?
That's the average maximum over 45 years of data. And in April 2026, Banda hit 47.6 degrees Celsius, which the Times of India reported was the highest April temperature in Banda since 1951. That's 75 years of records broken in a single month.
75 years. That's not a blip, that's a signal.
Absolutely. And the India Meteorological Department, the IMD, has a specific definition for what counts as a heat wave. It's officially declared when the maximum temperature exceeds 40 degrees Celsius and stays 4.5 to 6.4 degrees above the seasonal average. Banda wasn't just meeting that threshold, it was blowing past it. It was the hottest place in the country 6 times in just 12 days, according to the Times of India.
6 times in 12 days. And this is a city that's been beating out Rajasthan, the place everyone thinks of as India's heat capital.
That's the part that really caught researchers' attention. The Indian Witness reported that Banda has overtaken traditionally heat-prone regions like Rajasthan in terms of peak temperatures. Meteorologists say this shifting pattern shows how climate stress is increasingly hitting regions that weren't previously considered the most vulnerable.
So the map of extreme heat in India is literally being redrawn.
That's a really good way to put it. And understanding why requires looking at both the natural geography and, this is the part that gets really important for geography students, the human decisions that have made things dramatically worse.
Okay, so let's get into that. Because from what I've read, this isn't purely a climate change story.
Not at all. Scientists and environmental experts quoted by News 18 describe Banda as a man-made heat island, and that phrase is doing a lot of work. Yes, global warming is a background driver, but on top of that, there are very specific, very local human activities that have turned Banda into what one source called a giant heat trap.
What are those activities specifically?
There are several, and they all feed into each other. The first big one is deforestation. A study published in the Journal of Extension Systems, co-authored by Arjun P. Varma of Banda Agriculture University, found that Banda lost nearly 1/6 of its dense forest cover between 1991 and 2022. Varma told the Hindustan Times the major reasons were large-scale mining and agricultural encroachment inside forest land.
1/6 of the forest gone in about 30 years.
And the numbers from Technocrat magazine make it even more concrete. Around 2015, Banda had roughly 120 square kilometers of forest cover. By 2024 to 2026, that had dropped to somewhere between 95 and 102 square kilometers, a 15 to 20% overall decline. In some parts of the district, forest cover is now just 2 to 3%.
2 to 3%. That's almost nothing.
And trees do so much more than just provide shade. They drive evapotranspiration, basically. They release moisture into the air, which cools the surrounding environment. When you strip that away, you lose a natural air conditioning system. The land heats up faster during the day and doesn't cool down at night.
So deforestation is one layer. What else?
Sand mining. This is a huge one. Large-scale extraction of sand and material from the Ken River and also the Range and Bagai rivers has removed the natural riverbeds that once helped retain moisture. According to Technocrat magazine, this leads to faster drying of rivers and wells, massive dust generation from crushers, and reduced groundwater recharge. Prof. Dinesh Saha, head of the meteorology department at Banda Agricultural University, said mining activities had accelerated river drying and reduced moisture retention in the soil.
So the rivers that could have been cooling the region are drying up because of mining. Exactly. And then there's a third layer, industrial heat emissions. Brick kilns and mining machinery are continuously releasing what Insights IIS describes as anthropogenic heat generated directly by human activity. So you've got the sun baking the rocky ground, no trees to cool things down, no river moisture, and then on top of that, industrial equipment pumping out additional heat. It's like every natural cooling mechanism has been switched off one by one.
Professor Saha put it really well. He said, all these factors compound each other. That's the key insight. It's not one problem, it's a feedback loop. And News 18 described it as a vicious circle of heat. Each factor makes the others worse.
And then there's the weather system side of it too, right? It's not just the land.
Right. On the meteorological side, you have an anticyclonic circulation over central India, basically a high-pressure system that traps hot air and prevents it from dispersing. And then dry, harsh westerly winds coming in from the Thar Desert, blowing at 20 to 40 kilometers per hour according to the IMD, which are sweeping hot, dry air across the region. Mohammed Danish from the IMD's Lucknow Centre explained that Bundelkhand was largely unaffected by the western disturbances that brought temporary relief to other parts of North India. So while other cities got a brief cool down, Banda just kept heating up.
So it's geographically isolated from the weather patterns that could give it a break.
Precisely. And there's one more natural factor worth mentioning, the bare agricultural fields. After harvest, the empty farmlands act as heat-reflecting surfaces, according to Insights IIS. So even the agricultural land is contributing to the heat spike during the hottest months.
Okay, so we've got the geography, the weather systems, the deforestation, the mining, the industrial emissions, the bare fields, all of it stacking up. Now let's talk about what this actually means for the people living there, because that's where it gets really real.
This is where the human geography becomes so vivid. Reports from multiple sources, News 18, The Logical Indian, The Indian Witness, all describe the same scene. Roads completely deserted by late morning, shops shutting early, outdoor activity dropping sharply, people covering themselves completely when they do go outside.
And this isn't a city that can just work from home. The economy there is built on outdoor labor.
That's such an important point. Insights IIS describes Bundelkhand's economy as deeply tied to extensive outdoor physical labor, stone mining, agricultural cultivation, manual brickmaking. These are jobs you cannot do remotely. Farmers and laborers are being forced to alter their working hours to escape the peak heat, according to News 18. But there's only so much you can shift, the work still has to get done.
And the population we're talking about is significant. This isn't a small town.
Banda district had a population of just under 1.8 million in the 2011 census, and projections for 2026 put it at around 2.1 to 2.15 million people, according to Technocrat magazine. That's over 2 million people dealing with this every summer, and the summers are getting worse.
And the government response, what's actually been put in place?
At the national level, India's Ministry of Health and Family Welfare issued directives to states to operationalize dedicated heat stroke management units at all health facilities, ensure ambulance preparedness, and maintain real-time reporting of heatstroke cases. The IMD issued a red alert for severe heatwave conditions in Banda and surrounding districts. But the All India Disaster Mitigation Institute has been clear that top-down technical fixes alone won't solve this. Locally informed responses and inclusive planning are essential.
Which makes sense because the causes are so local. The mining, the deforestation, those are decisions made at the district level.
Exactly. And enforcement is a real challenge. Technocrat magazine noted that while Banda falls under Uttar Pradesh's mining regulations, enforcement against illegal activities remains difficult. So the rules exist, but the damage continues.
There's also the monsoon question, right? Because normally you'd think, okay, the monsoon comes, things cool down, but 2026 is looking complicated on that front.
Really complicated. The IMD has forecast the 2026 southwest monsoon at 92% of the long period average, which would make it the first below normal monsoon in 3 years. There's a 31% probability of below normal rainfall and a 35% chance of a deficient monsoon. So the natural relief valve that Banda and the rest of India depends on is looking weaker than usual this year.
So potentially a brutal summer with a weak monsoon to follow. That's a really grim combination.
And it connects to the longer-term picture. A 2026 research article published in Frontiers in Climate, looking specifically at Uttar Pradesh, found that nearly all districts in the state are likely to end up in what they call the danger zone for heat index, particularly during May and June, as climate change intensifies. The study used climate projections through to 2098 and found a clear intensification of extreme temperature conditions across the state.
So this isn't just a 2026 problem. This is the trajectory.
Outlook India reported that researchers are warning Banda could become increasingly unlivable in the coming decades if ecological damage continues unchecked. That word, unlivable, is doing a lot of work. It means agriculture fails, groundwater disappears, outdoor work becomes impossible for longer and longer stretches of the year.
And for geography students, this is such a powerful case study because it shows how physical geography, human geography, and climate all interact. It's not one thing, it's everything at once.
That's exactly the lens to use. You've got the physical geography, the rocky plateau, the proximity to the Tropic of Cancer, the semi-arid climate. You've got the human geography, the mining economy, the agricultural practices, the deforestation. And then you've got the climate layer on top of all of that, amplifying everything.
And the feedback loops between them. The mining dries the rivers, which removes cooling, which raises temperatures, which makes outdoor work harder, which changes land use patterns.
Professor Saha's phrase keeps coming back to me. All these factors compound each other. That's the geography of a crisis. It's not linear. It's a system.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, the idea that Banda has beaten Rajasthan as India's hottest location. Because I think that's genuinely surprising to most people, and it tells us something important.
It really does. Rajasthan has this cultural identity as the hot desert state. Places like Jaisalmer and Phalodi are the names people associate with Indian heat records. But Banda, a city in Uttar Pradesh that most people outside India have never heard of, is now consistently outpacing them. The Indian Witness described this as challenging the long-held perception that Rajasthan towns dominate the country's highest temperature records.
And that shift is partly because of the man-made factors we've been talking about.
Partly, yes. Rajasthan is hot because of its desert geography. That's relatively stable. Banda is hot because of its geography, plus a cascade of human decisions that have stripped away every natural buffer. That's a different kind of problem, and in some ways a more urgent one, because it means human choices could also reverse some of the damage.
That's actually a hopeful note buried in a pretty grim story.
It is. The All India Disaster Mitigation Institute's work on heat adaptation emphasizes that communities and institutions can respond through localized heat action plans, through revisiting indigenous cooling practices, through inclusive planning. The problem is man-made in significant part, which means solutions can also be locally driven.
Though the scale of what's needed is enormous. Reversing 30 years of deforestation, cleaning up the Ken River, regulating the brick kilns, that's not a quick fix.
No, it's not. And the enforcement challenge is real. Technocrat magazine was pretty direct about the fact that illegal mining continues despite regulations. But the alternative, doing nothing, leads to what researchers are calling an increasingly unlivable city. For over 2 million people, that's not an abstract outcome.
Let's also just sit with the human reality for a second. Because the images coming out of Banda, the deserted streets, the workers covering themselves completely, people describing it as India's furnace on social media, that's not just data. That's people's lives.
The Logical Indian reported that residents, labourers, farmers, health workers and local administrators are all struggling to cope with rising temperatures, water scarcity, health risks and disruptions to daily life. And the economy of Bundelkhand is built on outdoor labour, stone mining, farming, brickmaking. When the heat makes outdoor work dangerous for hours at a time, that's not just discomfort, it's lost income for people who are already in one of India's more economically vulnerable regions.
And Nature published a district-level analysis suggesting that prolonged heat waves in India could cause tens of thousands of excess deaths, disproportionately striking low-income regions. Banda fits that profile exactly.
That's the stakes. This isn't a story about temperature records for their own sake. It's a story about what happens to human activity, to work, to health, to agriculture, to daily life, when the environment reaches these extremes. And Banda is showing us that future right now.
Okay. So, when you step back from everything we've covered, the geography, the human decisions, the feedback loops, the human cost, what's the core thing you want someone listening to this to walk away understanding?
I think it's this. Banda is not just a climate change story. It's a story about how natural geography and human decisions interact to create a crisis that is greater than the sum of its parts. The rocky terrain was always there. The proximity to the Tropic of Cancer was always there. But the deforestation, the sand mining, the brick kilns, those are choices. And choices can be changed.
And the Frontiers in Climate Research makes clear that without intervention, this gets worse, not just for Banda, but for nearly all of Uttar Pradesh's districts by mid-century.
Right. The research projects a clear intensification of extreme temperature conditions across the state. Banda is the leading edge of something much larger. It's the place where the future is arriving first.
Here's what this really comes down to. For anyone studying geography, Banda is a masterclass in how physical systems and human systems are inseparable. You cannot understand why Banda is so hot without understanding the Ken River, the Thar Desert winds, the anticyclone, and you also cannot understand it without understanding the mining economy, the deforestation, the brick kilns. Geography is always both.
And the lesson for adaptation, which the All India Disaster Mitigation Institute has been clear about, is that solutions have to be locally informed. What works in a dense city won't necessarily work in a rocky, semi-arid plateau economy built on outdoor labour. The people of Banda need responses designed for Banda.
And there's something worth noting about the monsoon forecast too, because even the seasonal relief that Banda depends on is looking uncertain in 2026. The IMD's projection of a below-normal monsoon means the region may not get the rainfall it needs to recharge groundwater or cool the land before the next heat season begins.
Which is why the phrase vicious circle of heat from News 18 is so apt. The heat dries the land, the dry land intensifies the heat, the weak monsoon fails to break the cycle, and the next summer starts from an already elevated baseline. It's a loop that tightens with each passing year.
So we started this episode with a city where the streets are empty by mid-morning, and we end with the understanding that this isn't a freak event, it's the product of decades of compounding decisions, and it's a preview of what more of India and more of the world could face.
Banda recorded 48.2 degrees Celsius in May 2026. Its all-time record is 49.2 degrees, set in 2019. The gap between those two numbers is getting smaller. And the question researchers are asking is not whether Banda will break that record, it's what happens to 2 million people when it does.
That's the question that should linger. We started by saying Banda beat Rajasthan, the place everyone assumed was India's heat capital. That shift in the map of extreme heat is not a curiosity, it's a warning. The geography of crisis is moving, and Banda is where it's arrived first. Next time you look at a map of India, find Banda. It's a small dot in Uttar Pradesh, but right now it might be the most important place on earth to understand.